this as well so that people who will be left out, who may not be able to join this session, at the end of it, say by tomorrow, this may also go on our YouTube page of IPN online, and then you can go and catch this up. We are 7 minutes away from our official start. And as I said, I have muted all of you, but however, you're fairly, we try to make it interactive as possible. So you can put in your queries whenever you have to answer anything on the chat window. Mrs. Jacky will pick up your queries from there on. And obviously, in the second half of our deliberation, we will, I'm sure all of you know, are very, very adept in using Zoom. So there's something called a show of hand. Once you can do that show of hand, I will unmute you guys and you can ask your question. Okay? So that's the way we will flow this entire 1 hour session. We'll try to keep this in 60 minutes precisely. We will not like to extend because at this point in time, in Australia, it is 8:30 p.m. So the person who is joining in, for them, it's late evening. So they will possibly like to wind this up in sharp 1 hour, if I may say. However, if we still have a relevant question, we would not like to wade off this question. And if you feel their question is already being picked up by someone else, so let's avoid those questions if they are already picked up. Again, one more quick disclaimer. While you're asking the question, please keep it precise. Please keep it pointed. No pleasantries to be exchanged that it was a pleasure having you, etc., etc. Avoid those, if I may say, frills, if I may say. Let's keep this a very no-frill affair. And we, as I said, we truly believe we want to save our time and we want to make the best use of this time ahead of us. Okay? For the benefit of all of you, we already have now 227 odd people. I'm Gaurav Yadav. I am the moderator of the forum. That's the best introduction to me largely, and I'm your moderator for the day. I will keep coming in order to moderate this for the benefit of all of you. And more importantly, though we have the chat enabled for you, as I mentioned, please use chat only for the specific purpose. Do not put anything which is not conducive for this session. I will not think twice before removing you. So I've already made that clear. So please understand this, that we want to make this a very, very specific learning affair. And everyone who has invested their 1 hour, go back satisfied, if I may say, and worth their time. Okay, so 5 minutes to go. In the meantime, people are joining in. As I said, they are joining. We had almost 770 odd registrations. I hope we should get a 50% of it largely. So let's wait for another 3-4 minutes and then we can kickstart this. Though I have muted all of you, but I have this temptation of asking you this question: where all are you guys from largely? Which part of India? I also have few registrations from other parts of the world. In fact, there are leaders joining in from Sharjah, UAE, in fact, Jordan. While I was seeing the list, I'm just sharing with you. Maybe I can ask that question, but the only trick is the moment you unmute you, then it falls like a, right? Something which possibly I myself not very, very experienced to control for that matter. So I will not even attempt that. I won't even attempt that. Would you mind putting it on chat window if you guys are, where are you from? Which is, if you are outside of India, I would love to hear from you. Nigeria, see, as I said, Nigeria, Kathmandu, lovely. Yeah, Rohtak is still in India, so I don't need Rohtak from you, but welcome nevertheless. Yeah, Patiala is still in India. Sharjah, yes. Sharjah as well, good. UAE, a lot of Bangladesh, lovely. Very nice. So by the way, I'm a complete Indian, so don't worry. I respect everyone from Rohtak in every part of the world. So I'm just being a good host, if I may say. Atithi Devo Bhava, right? So we should welcome people from the outside more than people from within our country. So everyone who is from various parts of the country, welcome to the session. Thanks, and great to have you with us. We welcome you on behalf of the entire IPN fraternity from India. Great to have you all with us. Okay, so I think someone is raising hand. You have a question, Soumya, I think we are yet to start, but then still you have a question. I would love to pick up that question of yours. Anything you want to say? I can unmute myself, sorry. Okay, Mrs. Jacky, if you're around, I'm sure you're there. So let's see you, and we can kickstart this so that we can save on our time. I think we are just 2 minutes away. But then I once again formally welcome you, Jacky. So I think you'll have to unmute yourself, Jacky, and then we are happy to go with this. Yeah, you're now unmuted.
I'm here and ready.
Very nice. Good to see you, and welcome once again to this session of ours. I have not intentionally read out the, if I may say, the topic of the session, which I'm sure now you will take up. But firstly, welcome from all of us in India. Good to have you with us. And
thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen with you now as well.
Yeah, over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to share that. It should come up for us. Just a minute. Doesn't look like the right share, so I'm going to do that in a moment. Sorry, we'll pause that share. So anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to this session, and thank you for having me. I'm Jacky, and I'm all the way over in Sydney, Australia, quite far away. Now, I'm just going to make sure that this sharing screen happens, because it's not happening at the moment. Now, can you see that gamification in mathematics now? Great, okay.
We can see, Jacky, we can see the website of Matific right now, not your screen. Yeah, that's what we can see.
Are you seeing the blue screen?
No. I'm seeing the website or the Zoom address of your Matific.
All right, let's try this again. Sorry, guys. There we go. How's that? Are you seeing gamification in mathematics? Blue screen?
Not yet.
Yes? All good? Just give me a thumbs up if you're seeing that screen.
No. So we cannot see your screen yet. So me helping you out with this, if you can.
All right, I'm going to just try it again, because it looks like it's working from my perspective, but what is it you're able to see at the moment?
I am able to see your Zoom, which is Matific. Yeah, now we are here. Now we are here. Yes.
We've got it now. All right. Don't you love technology? That's what we're all here about tonight. Well, that's a relief. I'm glad we can make a start. So, all right. Thank you. Let's start again. Hi, I'm Jacky, and I'm in Sydney, Australia. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the lovely warm introduction. So, yes, you've heard a little bit about me already. I was a primary school teacher, so I've taught every grade from 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds across about 28 years. I did that. I always had an interest in technology and using it in the classroom, and then about 5 years ago I left the classroom and into the exciting world of mathematics and digital technology in terms of teaching mathematics with online resources, and I'm with Matific now. And in those last 5 years, I have travelled far and wide to literally hundreds of schools across Australia and New Zealand, been to Singapore, all over. And it's very interesting. It doesn't matter where I go, you tend to get the same problems, the same issues, the same questions wherever I go. And I did also have the good fortune last year to go to New Delhi. And my first trip over to India, went to the World Education Summit and made a presentation there and met a lot of people, and that was a fantastic experience. So one day, hopefully I'll get back again. I also wanted to start by saying I hope you are all safe and well, because what a year we are having. We're thinking of you over there because, yes, there are obviously issues in Australia as well, but we know you've got lockdown at the moment, whereas our schools are mostly going to be open after our school holidays, and things are quite difficult for you over there and very challenging. So I hope to help you through that a little bit too. I've got some tips and advice and some strategies to use there as well. All right, I think we might be ready to start. Do you think we're ready over there, everybody?
Absolutely.
All good to go? Excellent. All right, as we said, there'll be maybe 15 minutes or so at the end for Q&A. If you've got any questions, please store them and have those ready, have those questions ready. I'm going to be asking you some questions along the way too, but you don't have to answer me. They're more questions for you to just answer to yourself. Can you see the top of the screen okay there with the agenda? You can see all of that? Because that's our agenda for today. So we've got a lot to get through in a fairly short space of time. But basically we're covering students' attitudes towards mathematics, what barriers there are to stop them from learning mathematics, talk a bit about the importance of STEM education because we're hearing that all the time these days, and then into gamification. How does it work? Why does it work? And how can we utilize that in the teaching of mathematics? And as I said, some good practical ideas at the end as well. So let's make a start. I'm actually going to ask you a question. And it says, how do your students react when you say this? So as I said, you don't have to answer me. I want you to think about the answer yourself. How do your students react when you say this to them? There you are, there's the teacher. Let's do maths. Or it's time to do maths. Now, some of you might be principals who are not teaching face-to-face at the moment, or you might be doing remote learning, but you've got the idea. Picture a group of typical students, you're in your classroom and you say to them, time to do maths. What's their reaction? Have a think about that answer. How do they react? Are they happy? Love it, great, excited to do mathematics? Or the opposite, bit anxious, not so happy about it? What's the reaction? If you had a typical classroom there, your class, what's the split? Would it be 50-50? Half are happy, half are not happy? Would it be more unhappy? There's a reason why I'm asking this, because there is a real issue called maths anxiety. And I've got to tell you, it's not just with students. There's teachers that are very anxious about mathematics as well. They feel inadequate about teaching maths. I've seen it. I've trained a lot of staff in the last 5 years on mathematics. So there's a real thing out there called maths anxiety, and actually often the parents or the teachers, the adults, are passing that down. It's generational, and that's something we're looking to change. So have a think about that reaction. How do they react when you tell them it's time for maths? And why is it that sometimes, in fact quite often, and as I said, when I travel to all of these schools, I get pretty much the same feedback, that anxiety and lack of love. There's no passion for maths. There's very little passion for maths out there in young students. Why is that? Now, I find and I ask students that question all the time. Why don't you love maths? And there's 3 common answers that I get. I'm wondering if you can guess what they are. The first one, you can see by the look on this boy's face. It's boring. Who's ever heard that? Students will say, I don't like it. Maths is boring. And I find that so upsetting, because if you think about mathematics, it's such a broad subject. There are so many topics within mathematics. You've got capacity and volume and all of the number strands and probability and statistics and graphing and on and on. There's so many topics that you'd think there would be something out of that they would like. And so it's sad that they already at a young age see maths as boring. And if they feel that way when they're young, very unlikely they're suddenly going to love it when they're older and it gets more abstract. So this is where I'm coming from as a primary school educator, is developing that love of mathematics when they're young. It's so important. So I have my own theories as to why students find it boring. And here's one of them. That's what I call a worksheet. There's a lot of that going around in Australia, I can tell you still, that a lot of teachers are still handing out worksheets. And a worksheet is basically black and white, writing question, answer, they get a ticker across. It's not much fun, okay? And I'm not suggesting, and I'm going to say this throughout this presentation, I'm not saying don't ever do a worksheet. I'm always about giving a variety of resources, but what troubles me is still too many worksheets. And coupled with that, there's the good old textbook. Same story. I remember even when I was a child, that's going way back, the teacher saying, take out your book, open to page 37, and everyone would roll their eyes. Boring. Okay, it's not fun to be learning maths in that way. And a lot of schools in Australia proudly say, oh, we've got rid of textbooks. But actually, what does that mean? Got rid of textbooks. What it usually means is the class set. So typically in my early days of teaching, the student had their own textbook. They'd all have the same one. And you could refer to that and say, okay, today our lesson is page 12 or whatever. So a lot of schools have eliminated the class set of textbooks, but it doesn't mean they've got rid of textbooks. All that's happened is the teacher now photocopies pages from a textbook and hands them out as a worksheet. So it hasn't really eliminated the textbook, it's just using it in a different way. Now, the other thing that I think I was definitely guilty of, and so don't feel bad if you're guilty of this, is that the teacher is often out the front doing a lot of talking, okay? And I did a lot of that. And so demonstrating, this is the method, this is the procedure, this is how to get to the answer. I think that we do a lot of that because we're often time poor. And we often think, we don't have much time. I've got to get through this topic in 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I need them to understand in a hurry. And we think the fastest way is just show them. Just quickly show them the method, how to do it. We know research everywhere has shown students learn best by doing, not just being shown. They need to be doing. So we need to do a little bit less talk and a little bit more opportunity for students to actually do for themselves and learn for themselves. But as I said, don't feel bad because I did a lot of that talking as well, and I know it comes from the heart, comes from a good place, but it's from the fact that we've got a lot of other subjects we need to teach and not a lot of time to teach it. We have a syllabus that we've got to get through all of that content, and so sometimes we feel like that's the fastest way. All right, the other second point I'm going to make is another barrier to why students don't love maths. Reason number 2, I often hear, I'm scared of making mistakes. And this comes back to that maths anxiety. So many students worry about mathematics, much more than any other subject. They don't want to get it wrong. Why is that? I think it's because people are still doing so much testing in maths. Maths is often still today seen as a very black and white subject. You're either right or you're wrong. That's not always the case. It's the journey and the method that you use is very important. And if you look at high school mathematics, students are rewarded for showing their thinking and showing their working out. And, you know, a question might be worth 10 marks. You might get it wrong, but it doesn't mean you get 0 out of 10. You might get 7 because you did a lot of steps along the way that were correct. Are we doing that in primary school? I don't think so. I don't think we're doing enough of rewarding students for showing their strategies, explaining their thinking. And so that's causing stress. There's also a lot of pressure from parents. They want to know the score. When it comes to maths, that's how they grew up. That maths was about what score did you get? Not about what strategies did you use, what score did you get. So there's a bit of pressure there from parents. Children don't want to have to go home and say, I got 9 out of 20 or whatever their score might have been. There's also pressure within schools. Some schools, and I'm not criticising this strategy because it can be effective, but a lot of schools stream mathematics classes. So if you don't know what that means, it's like you might have a top class, a middle class, a support class. You've grouped the children according to their ability. And there's a lot of pressure there too. The student wants to be in that top class and they don't want to be dropped down to the other class. And that comes back to probably too much testing. And even when I ask schools, what resources are you using for maths? Often their reply relates to assessing resources. So I'm quick to say to them, okay, that's for you, the teacher, that's an assessing tool, but when are you teaching? What are you teaching? How are you teaching? There's sometimes too much testing and not enough teaching. All right, that's my little rant about that. And reason number 3, what's the other reason that children give why they don't love maths? You can tell by the looks on their faces. I just don't understand it. And as they get older, that gap starts to get wider. If they're not understanding it when they're young, it's going to be hard for them to bridge those gaps as they get older. I just don't get it. Now, one of the most challenging things you face in the classroom is the diverse range of abilities of your students and trying to cater to all of their abilities. Not only that, there are also different types of learners. So, you know, some students learn in different ways, and as the educator, we need to try and address all of those needs, and that's really challenging for the teacher. So I want you to think about the 3 different types of learners. There are really core 3 types of learners. I'm going to do a fun little thing with you in a minute too to figure out what type of learner are you. But these, your students in your classroom, you've probably got a lot of visual learners. That's the kind of person who's happy to read and look at the textbook, read it. They might be happy to watch your little demonstration on the whiteboard or wherever you're doing it. So they're learning visually. Then you've got your auditory learner. Now they like to have a conversation. They'd be happy for the teacher to come and chat to them about the concept, ask the teacher questions and have that communication line open, whereas the visual learner might be a little bit more independent. And lastly, the hands-on learner who doesn't want to listen to you and watch you, and they just want to get stuck into it, and they need tangible objects and they want to actually physically work through the problem. So you've got those kind of 3 types of learners in your classroom, and you have to try and deal with all of them, and they could all be working at different ability levels. That's a challenge. Now, what kind do you think you are? Do you think you're a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a hands-on learner? And I'm going to give you a little fun way to think about it in this way. Imagine that you just bought maybe a little piece of furniture from a shop, and it's come in lots of pieces. You know how they come flat packed, and you've got to put it all together, okay? So imagine you and your partner, you've just bought this piece of furniture and you have to put it together. Are you the person that grabs the instructions and starts reading what to do? Okay, we need to put part A with part B, and you want to read it and tell the other person what to do? Or are you the other person who doesn't want the instructions? You want to hand the instructions to somebody else, let them read it and tell you what to do, and you can ask them questions, and then you're happy to try and figure it out that way? Or are you the person that rips up the instructions? You don't want to know the instructions. You just want to rip the box open, get all the pieces and figure it out and get your hands dirty. So I always think that's a good way to kind of work out which one are you. You might be a little bit of both. Personally, I'm the one in the middle. I can see somebody's raised their hand, but we can always get your questions a little bit later. I'm very conscious of time. But I just think that's a very simplified way, but it's a good way to actually think about different ways students learn. Now, how do we address all of that? That's a problem, isn't it? I always say, just use a variety of methods. Because if you're using just one way, if you only use worksheets, you're not covering everybody. And as I said, I'm very into digital mathematics, but I would never say that's all you need. You only need a digital resource now. No, you should be using a variety of ways. Hands-on, worksheets, textbooks, digital, use the lot. And that way you've probably covered everybody. Because have you ever seen a student have that light bulb moment? And it's so amazing. That's one thing I miss about the classroom, where you've tried to explain something to a student and they just don't understand it. And then you try a different way, try a different tactic, and all of a sudden, bing, light bulb goes off, and now they understand it. So that's the best piece of advice I can give to you, is use a different way, use a variety of ways, and then hopefully you've touched everybody. All right, moving along. Don't blame the teacher. If you're a teacher, don't blame yourself. Learning is a two-way street. Yes, you need good teaching, but you also need students with the right attitude. So if you ever have parents or students blaming you or blaming the teacher. You've got to also think about, did the student have the right attitude? Because if you think about it, the most successful people in the world, and I'm not just talking about mathematics, I'm talking about in anything. It could be the best golfer, the best basketball player, the best musician, the top scientist. All of the most highly successful people in the world have something in common. Do you know what that is? Have a think about it for a moment. I was just asking my family this question and they came up with pretty similar answers. What do the most successful people, highly successful people, all have in common? Here's a big clue. And it's not that they did housework. They probably didn't have time for housework. It's effort. You know, there's an element of responsibility and onus on the student as well, that they need to put in the desired amount of effort to get those results. So it is definitely a two-way street. All right, moving right along. So STEM, you're hearing that word probably a lot. We hear it a lot in Australia. It stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. One problem I have with the word STEM and that acronym is I wish we could flip it around somehow and change it. The reason I say that, the M should come first. Because if you think about it, they need the thing that all of those things have in common, science, technology, and engineering, need strong math skills. You can't become an engineer or work in technology or be a scientist if you don't understand mathematics. So I actually think I wish there was a better word where the M came first, because to me, that's the most important thing. And, you know, if you look at your typical classroom full of students, what are they dreaming of being when they grow up? What do you think they want to be? They're probably dreaming of being a famous basketball player or soccer player or a famous successful musician or something like that. But the reality is, what we need in the future are people working in the areas of STEM. We need this child to be dreaming of being a scientist. We need one that wants to be a doctor. We need medical researchers. We need software designers and an engineer. And most importantly, there's got to be someone in there that's a maths teacher, because we won't be able to do all of those other things if you don't have a good maths teacher. And I wonder how many of your students are sitting there dreaming of being a maths teacher. Probably not many. So that's why I really want to instill that love and passion for mathematics when they're young, because we're going to need them when they're older. That's the future. However, now these are statistics from Australia, but I'm finding it doesn't matter what country that I research. It's a trend that's worldwide. Some alarming statistics. I won't read it all to you, but basically in a nutshell, the end of year exams in Australia or in New South Wales, the higher school certificate, that's the set of exams they do to go on to university. There are different levels of mathematics you can choose. You have probably a similar system. And the most popular one is the easiest level, which is, you know, good basic mathematics that's very practical and hands-on mathematics, but not good enough to do a STEM course at university. And in fact, in Australia, 1 in 4 girls are not doing maths at all for that set of exams, compared to 1 in 10 boys who don't do it. So 41% in New South Wales, 41% of the students are doing a course that won't get them to university to do a STEM degree. And 1 in 4 girls are doing maths and all. So you've got over half of the children have already been eliminated that have no chance of doing a STEM degree. In fact, a lot of universities in Australia now are offering bonus points in they call it the ATAR, the entrance exam, to encourage them to do a higher level of mathematics. Now, if you are working in primary school maths, like I was for all those years, you're probably thinking, well, that's not my fault. That's not my problem. It starts when they're young. I said it before. They are not going to love and achieve mathematics when they're in their teen years and when they're older if they haven't got those solid foundations when they're young. So it is our responsibility to give them the best foundations that we can. So yeah, it does come back to us, I'm afraid. All right, now I'm asking you question number 2. Remember I asked you before, how do your students react when you ask them, or when you say to them, let's do maths. What if you ask them this question instead? Let's play online games. What's the reaction then? I'm laughing because I think I know. I think I can guess what the reaction would be. And it's probably something along these lines, isn't it? I'm sure you're all nodding. Yay, they're all cheering. And if you ask the students, why do you love online games so much? Why do you like playing those games? I'll bet the answer is this: because it is F-U-N, fun. That's what they're going to say, it's fun. All right, so now I want to actually go into why it's fun. Why does gamification work? How does it work? It's not a fluke. Somebody didn't just make a game and kids love it. There's a lot of thought that's gone into the making of these the most successful games. Psychologists have worked with the companies that make these games to understand human behavior. And there are really 10 key points that make games successful and make children, not just children, adults too, want to continue to use them. So I'm going to very quickly go through these points. All right, the characters. There's often fun, interesting characters in there. Some of them you'll love, some of them you don't love, you hate, and you want to capture them, and you get invested in those characters. Number 2 is there's a storyline or a plot that you enjoy and you like to follow. Number 3, it's a form of escape. So children's lives these days are very busy and stressful. Gosh, 2020 is stressful, not just for adults, but for students as well. Going into that kind of fantasy world is a nice escape from reality for a little while. Number 4 I have highlighted because this is a really key point. Active participation. What makes games different to watching a TV show or watching a movie is this point number 4, active participation. If you watched a movie or you read a book, watch a TV show, you'll have characters and a storyline, and it's a form of escape. But what's different with those online games is you have choices to make. You get to choose what character you want to be and maybe what outfit they're going to wear and what background you want to choose and what speed you want to go at. And there are lots of options that you don't have when you're watching a movie. You're passive. You just watch a game. You have a say in what's going on. And so that's a very key point. All right, number 5, there's often a goal that you're trying to achieve. It might be to catch the bad guy, or it might be to find the hidden treasure, or whatever it might be. And people get very invested in wanting to achieve that goal. And in fitting in with that, there are often levels to achieve that end goal. And have you ever seen children, if you've got children of your own, this might sound familiar, you're nagging them to stop playing the game and they'll say, I just 5 more minutes and then I'll be on level 7 or whatever it might be. They really want to get to that next level because it's that sense of achievement. And it gets very competitive at times. It might be that you're competing just against the computer, or it might be that you're competing against other people, whether it's in the room or whether it's online. This one surprises people. Social. A lot of parents worry about their children sitting in a room by themselves playing online games, that they're being antisocial. Clearly, if they were doing that for too long, yes, it is. But you can be quite social with these games too. My son is 25 years old and he still finds it's a social thing. He'll ring up friends and say, come over and play FIFA or whatever it might be, whatever game it might be. Gives them a reason to get together and socialise. Or even if they are on their own, they might be playing against friends who are also online. So there is a social element to it as well. Speed. Okay, the reason why speed's important is because it's back to that sort of fantasy and escape. Often, if it was a car racing game or something, you are doing speeds that you would not do in the real world. So it's out of your normal. And you can often choose the speed levels, and that's the adrenaline rush. That gives you that rush that really makes you want to play. Last but not least, and I've highlighted this because of course this is important, it's the technology. Technology can do so much more than what you can do with just pen and paper. And so you can create these characters and they can flip and turn and have amazing graphics and things that are far beyond your normal world, and makes it a little bit special. All right, so that's why gamification works, those 10 key points. And imagine this, imagine a world where you can teach and learn mathematics, combining that with that love of playing games. That's what I'm talking about tonight. How would your children be? How would your students be? I can't do that dance. If you can do it, by all means, go right ahead. But I won't be doing it. They'll be doing the happy dance. If they can learn maths and it's fun, like that, those games they play, everybody's happy. You know what? It's here, it's possible. There are already high quality mathematics, digital mathematics out there that follow those 10 principles. Now I'm going to show you some examples here, one for all 10 actually. I'm going to show you, this one here is showing, what I want you to do actually, I want you to watch this little video and I want you to have a think about what maths skill is it teaching. Clearly it's fun and it's colourful and it feels like a game, but it's very cleverly teaching a math strategy. See if you can figure out what it is. Now this is addressing that point number 1 about having a story. Remember we said that's important in gamification. So the story in this one, the person's traveling, look, they've ended up in India and they're at the airport and the guy at the airport saying, how much money are you bringing in? And they're saying, I've got, this is from Matific, this is an example. So that's how much money the person's got. I had 16 and now I've got another 28. And he's saying, well, how much money are you bringing into the country? And this little clever machine over here can convert the coins. So if you have a look, they're going to put all of these little $1 coins into the machine. And if once you put 10 in there, it'll convert it over to I'm calling it dollars, I'm from Australia, $10 coin. All right, and that helps them to figure it out. Have you figured out what math skill it's teaching? It's place value, because it's converting how much I had altogether. So that one was the story one. This one is about another example. All right, we'll get that happening. That should be better now. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, guys. We'll get that back up and running. It's just loading. Sorry. I love technology.
No problem.
Sorry about that. It's just the internet's just gone a little bit slow on me. Doesn't want to play that one. I'll move to the next one and see if that works better, but I'm not sure because it might be just an internet thing. Just says loading. Sorry guys, thank you for your patience. I'm just going to try and get my internet, make sure that's happening again. It looks like it's on. So not sure why that's not happening. There we go. All right, we're back. Thank you for your patience. All right, so here we go. I've already shown you what this is working on, but it's escape. This is a form of escape, and you know they're making a potion. You've got to put the units of mass and weights onto those, we call them balance scales, in order to make the potion. So this is a bit of a fantasy, where they've moved into a fantasy world, and I've already shown you there that it's working on the skill of mass. I'll make that nice and big so you can see that better. Okay, there we go. All right, moving to the next one. What are we addressing here? Okay, so this is about active participation, because if you look at this, the child's going to the movies. They get to choose which movie do they want to go to, and then it'll continue on. And the internet's going a bit slow again. There we go. Think about what math skill that will be. $1. It looks like we've got American coins there. 25 cents. How many do we need to make the dollar? So there are a few options because they chose their movie. And now as we move on, they get to choose their size of popcorn, which is pretty nice. Well, I'm a bit hungry, but I won't be greedy. I'll choose the middle size one. You can imagine how children love doing that. So they're playing, they're actively participating, but the math skill they're learning is about, of course, money. And it's not just money. Often there are multiple skills involved there. There was some division in there, and addition in there, and so on. So they're learning more than just one skill quite often. All right, moving along. Let's look at this example here. It's about achieving your goal. Now this one here, there's instructions. You are following the instructions. You're in the control tower. The goal is to get this spaceship back to Earth. The instructions from the pilot to click the panel and so on. Idea of what math skill it is that it's addressing. It's asking the child to put in a number. 5 megawatts. Okay, so they need to put in 5 megawatts. By the way, something like this game, this example is also from Matific. You can have it read out the question. So if the child is quite young and is having difficulty with the reading the question, it'll do that. And that's really important because you don't want a child looking like they're making errors and then you think their maths is weak when actually all it was a comprehension issue. So it's always important that it's very intuitive what it is that they need to do and that the question can be read out. And that one there was all about numbers up to 20. Here's another example here, and it's all about achieving these levels. So this one you actually have a choice of what speed you want to go at, and they have to skip forward by 3 to collect the keys and unlock the chest. So this is doing a lot. This is telling a story, but they have to actually move through the levels to achieve their goal of getting that key. And this one here, you can see they're counting by 3s. Another thing that you should know, and this is with good quality resources, what you want to see is that if a child makes an error, they don't get punished with a big red cross, because remember, we're trying to alleviate maths anxiety. In this particular game, if they make an error, they get some guidance, they get some scaffolding, and they can continue on. It doesn't mean the whole game's ruined if they make an error. And you can see the math skill in this one is skip counting. And so this example was counting by 3s, but there are various examples. All right, what's this one going to do for us? This is about the competitive side of things. Now, I'm a very competitive person. I love my sport. I didn't tell you this. I can see the Sydney cricket ground, the lights through my window straight ahead. I was going to give you a cricket example in a minute. Have a look at this game, though. This is fun. So I'm the red snail, and I've got to use the space bar to jump. So it's a race. It's a competition. But there's a math skill involved here, which you'll see in a moment. What is the math skill that it's teaching? Oh, that's a slow snail there. All right, you'll see the question coming up. What time did snail number 1 reach the finish line? So it's actually teaching about time. Okay, so you can imagine how the children feel like they're having fun and playing games, but they're actually learning. Now, this is a live component that Matific has. You'll see that sometimes, remember I talked before about sometimes children are playing against other people around the world, so it can be social. So this child is actually playing against other students around the world, but learning maths at the same time. So let's see what the skill is that they have to do. They've got to use the cards that they've been dealt to make the biggest number possible. See how it's something times something plus something, and there are brackets there. So that's really interesting to watch a student. If you can watch a student do an activity on a digital resource, you can learn a lot about them. So that's teaching about operations and place value. That one there. We're getting there. We're near the end. So speed. Okay, this is another online game where you can play against people around the world or against the computer, but it's teaching fluency and speed. I've already told you the answer there. Speed and fluency, but there's a number skill involved. You've got to be quick. You've got to type in the answers very quickly. And you can see at the top there, it's a race. So I'm competing against other people. So you've got that competitive side of it as well. And there's also an element of levels in this as well, because see, now I've moved to the next level, the screen changed. So it's often using several elements that make gamification work. within that one game. And if you make an error, you get some help along the way. Sometimes it's even fun if you make an error, something funny can happen. All right, now I love this activity. In fact, I'm going to even pause it for a moment. The reason why I love this activity is I'm not so great spatially, I've got to admit. So, you know, when you're teaching about shapes, and this is colour the net to match the shape. Now, typically what we would do in a classroom is we might have a net on a piece of paper and children are cutting out shapes, folding them up, gluing them together and all of that. A lot of mess, a lot of wasted paper. I'm not saying don't do that, but what I am saying, this is such an effective way to improve your spatial awareness as well. So just have a, and this is really utilising technology. Unfortunately, a lot of online resources, you think because it's online, it's really using technology, but it's often just question answer, you know, tick or across and a child gets a score. A lot of maths resources online still are just like a worksheet, but it's online. Whereas this is what technology can do for you. Look how clever it is. So you've got to match up that shape on the right. You can fold it up and spin it around, and it's really giving children a good sense about 3D objects and spatial awareness. Now that gave me, when I was using that in the classroom, that gave me really innovative ways to teach mathematics beyond anything I'd ever done before. So when you're looking at digital resources for maths, try not to choose the ones that just look like the same as a worksheet because that's not really going to get children excited about maths, and it's not going to improve their depth of understanding in the way something like that is. So just watch out for the, always look at the student activities when you're choosing those resources. I think I rest my case. I think I've proven that it is possible. It is possible to play games but learn maths in a very clever way at the same time. And here's something to tell your parents, I guess. If you are going to start using a digital resource, some parents worry that the children are just playing games. I don't want my children just playing games. They need to understand that, look closely at what they're doing. There's a lot more in there than just playing games. You know, for example, those Matific ones, they're designed by mathematicians, and play them yourself. Tell the parents, have a try of playing those yourself. They are quite challenging. So don't be fooled that just because there's bright, colourful graphics doesn't mean it's just a game. Okay, so that's a little trap that some people might fall into. I'm going to give you, before we go into our Q&A, I've got a couple of examples of how you can use digital technology in a practical way, especially for remote learning, because I know a lot of you are doing that at the moment and doing distance learning. I mentioned something about cricket, and I've got to tell you my cricket story before I move on, or I'm going to forget. So I know you love your cricket over in India like we do here in Australia. I probably shouldn't tell you who my favourite cricketer is because you might not agree. I'll tell you that at the end. Remind me to tell everybody. But one thing that's also important about mathematics and teaching, one barrier to children learning is, remember we had that slide about I just don't understand it? A lot of children don't relate maths to anything that they do in the real world. They don't recognise that connection and make that link. And here's my cricket example. So when my son, I mentioned him before, when he started school, and he'd been at school for a couple of months or a few months, so he's about 5 or 6 years old at this stage, his teacher called me in for a meeting and said, you know, your son can't add. We've been doing basic addition. He can't do it. And I said, yes, he can. And the teacher was very definite. No, we've tried it. We've been doing 4 plus 3 and 3 plus 2 and all this basic addition, and he can't do it. I said, I absolutely know he can. So I called him in. His name's Alex. I said, Alex, come here. He comes in. I said, Alex loved cricket. He was already playing cricket at a very early age. And he was watching it and playing it. I said, Alex, if you were batting and you got 2 boundaries and a single, how many runs have you scored? He said, 9. I said to the teacher, he just did 4 plus 4 plus 1 in his head. So he could add, but he needed the context. So when I talk about teaching differently for different students, if you feel like there's a child that there's some kind of gap, they're just not getting it, try to make it real for them and put it in a real context, and it can make a difference. And some of these activities I'm going to show you now might help you to do that, especially while you're doing distance learning. Sorry, I had to tell you that little cricket story. Remind me at the end, I'll tell you who my favourite cricketer is. All right, so here is another example of a digital activity that you can do. This is another Matific one. But what I want to do is, when you're using digital resources like this, unfortunately, a lot of teachers fall into the trap of thinking that your job's easy now. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is assign the activity. The child goes away, it keeps them busy, and you see their results, and your job is done. Now, that is one way that you can use a digital resource. It is very easy to keep the children busy and productive, but there are many ways you can connect that to the rest of your maths lesson. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so this little activity here, the characters are quite gorgeous. So it's about ordinals, you know, first, second, third, and position. So just let's watch this first. It says, hand the belt to the first student in line. There's the belt. And there's the first student. Hooray, got that right. This is obviously for quite young students. Hand the hat to the first rabbit. So I've got to look where the rabbits are, and I want the first rabbit. I'm looking for the rabbits. There they are. There's the first one. Okay, next instruction. It says, hand the bow to the third cow. So I'm looking for the cows. There's one cow, two cows, and there we are, found the third cow. All right, so think about that activity. You could assign that for your students to do, and yes, they could do that, and that's great. Okay, that's a good start. What else could you do now as a follow-up? Here's some ideas. There are actually many ideas. I'm just coming up with a few. You could say to the students, get your family members to stand in a line, shortest to tallest, and then put little labels on them. First, second, third, fourth. Take a photo of it. I always think taking a photo is a good idea as well, and making those labels is a nice idea. What else could you do? Do the same thing with their feet. You all stand in a row, put your feet together. Is it the same result as their heights? Is the smallest foot the shortest person, and so on? This is a fun one. Tell the child, find 10 objects in your home. So they're going to scoot around the house, all different lengths. So you might have a coin, and then a pencil, and then a pen, and then a ruler, and then a whatever, a spoon, whatever they can find. Line them all up, shortest to longest. Put labels on them, first, second, third, because it's often the language of maths is important. Once again, you could take a photo, they can send you the photo, and that's a great way to marry up your digital with your hands-on. And you can create a whole lesson very easily out of one of those games by doing that. You're all teachers. You've probably thought of a dozen other ideas that you could do. All right, I'm just going to show you one more. Have a look at this. This one is about area. How many squares are needed to cover this rectangle? So when the child is doing the digital resource, they've got these little squares of grass. Now, if they're working out how many squares, in the early days when they're just learning this concept, they'll want to cover the whole thing. But this is where I talk about making that connection with the real world. You could explain to a child the formula of area. The formula is length times width. But why is it length times width? You can see it there, why it is. It's 3 times 3. And in this example, it's showing clearly 6 times 6. So as they get more proficient at it, they don't actually need to cover the whole square. They can learn and see in that way why the formula is what it is. So after the child's had to play with this, what assignments could you give them to do at home? Maybe they could cut out their own squares. I'm suggesting 10 by 10, 10 centimetre by 10 centimetre squares, cut out lots of them. Could be an old newspaper or whatever. And then give them something to measure. It might be, and I love estimating. Estimating is important because if you see a child has sensible estimations, they're getting this topic, they're understanding it. If their estimates are way out, they haven't quite got it yet. So get them to have an estimate first, Get them to record their results. How many squares would it take to maybe cover the desk they use, or their dinner table, or their bed? You could find whatever, their book, whatever object you want, but get them to estimate first and then measure. And you'll see how their estimates start to become stronger and more accurate as they progress. And then what is the perimeter of what you just measured, and what is the area of what you just measured? And so you can see how you can really match up your digital with other activities that you could do in mathematics. I think we're just about come to the end. I think I've covered pretty much everything. So I'm hoping you've got some nice meaty questions for me. All right, I'm going to hand it back to you, Garava. What have we got for me?
A lot of questions, hopefully.
I just hope I have the answers.
So I think we'll take a few questions. I think we have 10 or 9 minutes to be very precise. If you can just possibly disable your screen, then we are good to go in that case, right?
Okay. There we go.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry about those little technical hiccups we had, but I think we're good now.
It's very much quite possible. So I'll quickly, I have few show of hands. I'll go to Shobhi Thomas. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. Please give your brief introduction, your city, your name, your school, and then you can ask your question.
Hi all, good evening. This is Shobhi from Hyderabad, India. I work in an international school. We go for CBSE curriculum. Most of the games which you have introduced, it is very nice. And actually we are using few of the ones in our curriculum as well for our lower kids. But as a senior class teacher, I handle with the 14 to 15 ages. So how we can utilize this gamification for senior classes? Just wanted to ask questions. Jacky.
My hearing's not always so great. So if you could just relay that again, Grava, if you could just relay, was it using them in the classroom? Was that the question?
What she is doing is that she would like any of a similar resource or a better resource which is available for the senior grades as well, something to for a middle school or a senior school. Yeah, something.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't like, I know this sounds a bit of a cop-out, but I really don't like recommending resources. I just feel uncomfortable with doing that. So yes, I mean, I'm with Matific and that's primarily for primary schools, but and you will find there'll be the early grades of high school that it's because there's a lot of problem solving that could use it. So if you are teaching 12, 13, 14-year-olds, there still could be a lot of appropriate content in there for you. Beyond that, I wouldn't feel comfortable, I'm sorry, in which resources to recommend to you, I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Pankaj, Awad, we'll take up your question. You can unmute yourself. Yeah, Pankaj.
Good evening, ma'am. Myself, Mr. Pankaj. Mr. Pankaj Awad from Sharad Pawar School, Maharashtra State.
Yeah.
Just I want to ask, sir, just if I want to teach LCM, HCF, so which type of games I will show the students? That question I want to ask, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
For lower classes, 4th or 5th standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was cutting in and out. Would you be able to relay that again?
Wants to teach LCM to the lower classes. How can he teach LCM to the lower classes using gamification logic? Yeah, is that it?
Well, I mean, yeah. And so what age levels are we talking? What levels would they be working out?
Junior grades. He's saying junior grades, right? Pankaj, you can repeat your
4th
question.
and 5th standards.
Pankaj, you
just
can
good evening to all, ma'am. Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, just I want to ask if I want to teach, suppose LCM, HCF concepts to class 4th or 5th standard.
Class 4th, 5th, how can
class 4th, 5th standard. They are having the content of LCM, HCF chapters, sir.
Correct.
Factor multiples chapter is there, and in that if you have to teach this LCM, HCF method.
Correct.
So which type of games we will show the students so that topic will be interested.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, look, differentiation is so important, but also children's feelings are important. And if a child is working below, I hope this is going to answer your question. If a child's working below grade level, they don't want to feel singled out. They often don't want to be put in a separate group, or you get this work, but everybody else is getting this. And so digital technology is great for that, because, you know, a lot of resources, I know we've got it set out in this way, that an activity might at first glance look the same, but actually it's designed at different levels. So for example, the ones with numbers might be counting to 20 for some, but it could be counting to 50 for others, and it could be up to 100 for others. And so people all feel like they're doing the same activity, but actually it's been tailored and you can assign it to their appropriate level. Now, the other thing that works well too with digitally, if children work in pairs or small groups and they learn off each other. I don't know if you know the phrase peer-to-peer learning, but it's very powerful. Children learning off each other is more powerful than learning off the teacher. So often there are different strategies you can use. Remember I talked about that? To get to the answer, there's a different path, a different strategy you can take. So I love that when you're using resources like that, there are often multiple solutions. So one child can suggest something and the other child gets that light bulb. Oh, I wasn't going to do it that way. I was going to do it this way. And they learn off each other. So if you get the chance to work in small groups or pairs, that's a really good way too. I hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, I like to quickly add to this. So all the teachers who are, or the school leaders here, part of us. So Matific is one of the global edtech enterprises, which is very, very strong at the math level, usually for the junior grades, if I may say. But at the same time, because Matific is working with us largely at IPN, so the idea is that if you would like to use their resources, we'll send you the details through your principals largely, and you can explore all these resources available with them. Right, so maybe right now, Pankaj, if I may look at it, your answer may not have been answered in specific largely, but I think what we can do for you is that once we have noted down your query, and number two, we will share with you the link wherein the resources are available for teachers specifically. You can explore that in a way, an archive or a repository for your own self. Okay, so I hope that answers in a way your query.
No,
Yeah?
sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Sheja.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, Sheja, repeat your question. You can unmute yourself, Sheja. Sheja, Ratish.
Yes, sir. Good
Yeah.
afternoon, everyone.
Yeah,
I'm Sheja Radish from Sunrise English Private School, Abu Dhabi. So I have a question, Abu Dhabi, yes. So I'm teaching in secondary section. The thing is, there are a lot of theorems, proofs, and its applications in secondary section level. So actually, children are finding difficult to learn that theorems and its proof. So is there any easy method or game-like things are there for that students, those who are studying in secondary section and senior secondary section?
So as I mentioned, I think I will take up that question in the interest of time, Sheja.
Okay.
That the beauty is that we will be getting you a 2-month access largely for the Indian school, at least to start with. I'll have to check with the Matific team what is they are offering for the Abu Dhabi region largely. So what we are enabling for our members in India is that they will get the access for complete 60 days free of any charges largely. They'll have these all games or repository for their benefit largely, right? For you, I'll have to get back to you. Okay?
So what do we have to do for that?
No, we'll communicate to you, Sheja, through your principals largely, who is part of the network. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Diana Shah.
Can I just add something to that too?
Sure.
When you're reviewing your resources, not just Matific, any resource, don't just look at it from your own perspective, the teacher perspective, because of course you want to have a good teacher interface and have it easy to use. Of course you naturally want that. But get feedback from the student, because as I keep saying to you, we want to increase student engagement and learning when they're young. And that's so powerful that if they are enjoying mathematics, they're more likely to learn. So yeah, also look at it from the student's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's a very broad-based answer, which is not just this, but there is a host of other things for that matter. But what we felt was that at this point in time, one of the very comprehensive resource pool for the junior legs is with Matific. I think you guys should explore that. And obviously, if it works with you in your ecosystem, in your context, possibly you use it, otherwise you give it a pass largely, right? Jayana Shah, your question. We have exact 2 minutes and we'll take up these questions. And then, as I said, as a matter of fact, all of you who have attended this session, not just you as a teacher, but your school will be getting this offer from being a part of the IPN member, that they will get the access of Matific courseware, if I may say, for 2 months largely, of any charges largely. Okay, Jayana Shah, your quick question. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, sir. I just wanted to know that how can I teach to grade 1 level discrete mathematics? We are teaching discrete mathematics. I am from Silver Oaks International School, Hyderabad. So
Okay.
we are teaching discrete mathematics to grade 1. So how can I go with this? Because it's little higher for them. So would like to know some activities for them.
Lot of noise at your backdrop. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a bottom
Can you
fell down.
repeat the
Discrete
question?
mathematics. Yeah, discrete mathematics. How can I teach to grade 1 level?
Okay. Jacky, did you get that question?
No, just can you relay?
Yeah.
Okay, discrete mathematics means connecting different things and making sense out of it. We are teaching to grade 1 level, and so I just would like to know the activities for this. How can I teach them?
Okay, for grade 1 you are saying, and the term you are
Yes.
using it, can you spell that out? Discrete? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Discrete mathematics. DISCRETE mathematics.
Okay, I have possibly heard that term for the first time, but nevertheless.
Okay, so sorry, it's great. You're teaching grade 1.
Grade 1, yeah.
Yes.
And she
In
is.
Silver Oak School, Hyderabad.
And she
And
wants.
so you wanted some ideas with teaching grade 1?
Yeah, discrete.
Yeah, I'm teaching grade 1. Discrete mathematics. We have a resource book from our own school, concept book, in which we have a standard called discrete mathematics.
Diana, can you just type your answer on the chat window?
Yeah.
The term you are saying.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Sure. We'll do that. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Jyoti Godke, your question, ma'am. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great session. I attended it for a short time, but I'm doing my PhD on maths anxiety, contributing factors for maths anxiety and coping skills for that. So I want to know, and I want to get connected with all the teachers and want to feedback from the teachers' side, because I know the students' perspective, that what all are factors for maths anxiety. But I want to work more in this area and want to know from ma'ams that what exactly is the reason behind maths anxiety and maths phobia. I'm teaching to class 9th and 10th. It's my 30th year into teaching, 30th year. And I really enjoy and want to create more awareness and more fearless maths classes. So want to know from ma'ams what exactly I can do for my students.
Yeah, and when it comes to the maths anxiety, I think I said that a lot of it comes from the fact that we do so much testing, and it's often about the score in mathematics rather than the process and the strategies. And I don't know if you're familiar with summative assessment versus formative assessment. So summative assessment is sort of you teach the topic and you do a test at the end of the topic and there's your score. And in algebra, you're getting 75%. Right? Yeah. That's summative. But formative is actually little assessments you can do along the way that are much less formal and so much less stressful. So for example, this is younger students, but that little exercise I gave about area and the formula for area, you don't need to just necessarily do a formal test at the end of the subject. Along the way, give them tasks. So if you give them the task of estimating how many square meters is that book, And now I want you to measure and show me. And they just feel like they're doing a task, but you're actually taking a note of how successful they were. And that's taking away the anxiety, and it's giving you a much more accurate picture of their ability, rather than just giving them a written test at the end that they get all anxious about.
Yeah.
And I know that our sad reality is students have to do formal testing. They do along the way, but I think the classroom teacher could do much less of it. We don't need that formative testing along the way is much more valuable. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry that we're kind of running out of time, but I really appreciate your questions. Thank you.
But I want to be in touch with all the teachers because I'm from Indore, MP, India, and I'm not working in any school. But luckily I got the link for that, and I could attend hardly for 15 minutes. But I hope it will be fruitful if we get connected by some means, and I get to learn more from you people. For my students and for myself, of course.
To help, Jyoti. Thank you. Jayana Shah, the question by Jayana was, Jacky, is about, I think, discrete. The word she used is discrete.
Yes. Not a word we use often here, and I can see somebody here has written that discrete maths is the study of mathematical structures that are continuous maths, such as calculus. And you know, it's interesting because things such as algebra, people tend to, and calculus, people tend to think that's high school, but primary school maths leads into that. There are more subtle ways and practical ways you can do algebra. We have algebra on Matific for year 5 and 6, and that leads into that. And you know, this is a global problem, and it was a problem for me at school too. That transition from primary school maths to high school maths is often not smooth. People often saw maths very different as a whole new subject in high school. It became very abstract. And so we need to address that when they're younger and really prepare them better for that.
Correct, correct. I'll take up last one question and then we are done with this, Jacky, which is Pritiman Sandha. You can ask your question. Pritiman, right?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Please ask your question.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Actually, I'm from VSS English Medium School, Sambalpur, Odisha.
Okay.
Actually, my doubt is that students who are from 8, 9, 10, especially the subject from geometry, for example, take lines and angles or quadrilateral, how can we make them comfortable with this theorem taught to them? And is there any playway method, or is there any kind of different techniques they can learn the theorems very comfortably and very easily?
Jacky, you there?
Can you relay that?
Yeah. So basically, what the gentleman is saying is that for the graders which are 8th, 9th, and 10th in geometry, how can I think, if I understood well, you can teach, or there can be a method which is far more simpler with respect to teaching him line, area, etc. All these on a geometry side, largely for that matter. How can be more, if I may say, interesting way of teaching them all those which are largely theorem based, if I may say, right? Geometry is largely theorem, all that. What any take of yours largely? Would you have any content?
Yeah, look, without a doubt, it gets a lot more challenging to make it fun when they're older, no doubt. But like I mentioned before, if you can put it in a different context, think about what interests the students. It might be cricket, or you know, it could be swimming, or it could try and put things in a practical way where they can see, I have a need for this knowledge. A lot of children switch off with mathematics because they think, I'm never going to use this. I don't need it. So you need to put it in a context, and hopefully in a fun context that they can relate to. Could be even music. Something that they can relate to, that they suddenly realize, oh, there's a connection there. If I know about that maths, I'll do better with this, or even just to make it fun. That's the best advice I can give at a short time.
Absolutely. So I think what you mentioned through that one of the example, which I really found to be very apt, which is giving anything and everything a contextual connect largely. So while you were teaching your son about the basic mathematics, which was 4 plus 4 plus 1, I think that's far more easier way of understanding. Plus, the guy is not really seeing it as a pressure of being that he's learning something, but at the same time he's enjoying and learning a new way of doing the same thing possibly. Otherwise, I would have taught that in a typical black and white or a board or say a whiteboard structure, that 4 plus 4, 4 plus 4 is 1, or whatever the number is largely. So I think that is the important part for us to understand.
And you can build on that. So, you know, when it comes to, I come back to cricket again, that can be much more complex. You can talk about speed ratios, angles of the arches, and using a protractor to figure out the angle that a fast bowler uses compared to a spin bowler, and so on. Which reminds me, I didn't tell you my favorite cricketer.
No, I was remembering I have come to that question any which way, but then yes, please go ahead.
Can you guess? David Warner is my favorite. I'm sorry.
Lovely. So he's been dancing on Indian music a lot of lately, if you've been seeing his videos largely. So nevertheless.
He's actually doesn't live too far from here. He played in the same cricket club as my son. So anyway. And somebody's just made a little comment about the speed aspect. And I agree with them. You don't want to use speed too much when it comes to a mathematics online resource, because that will, in a lot of children, actually just aggravate that anxiety. It shouldn't be all about speed. Fluency is important, and so sometimes, like in Matific, will sometimes have games that involve fluency and speed for a bit of fun, a bit of variety. But our core activities, no, the child should be working at their own pace. And if they need help, no Red Cross, they actually get a bit of scaffolding and guidance, and they're taught to persevere. They don't get that help on their first response. They need to have another try and rethink before they start getting that help. So the person who just asked that question about speed, I agree with you. It should only be as a little additional thing when you're building fluency.
Yeah, Ishita, if you like to, Ishita and Manju, quickly, and then we'll wind this up. Ishita Chaudhary, you can unmute yourself.
I can see there's a question there about differentiation.
Yes, it's Ishita Chaudhary from Bangladesh, ma'am. That is my question. So after I participate and I observe the whole session, I'm thinking about, as we are following differentiated learning, our learners has different skill. So
yeah, and you know, a good online resource makes differentiation very easy, because you probably, well, I know with ours, you've got access to every grade level. So, and it's discrete. So you can be assigning an activity. You might teach grade 4 and you've got a child working at grade 2 level. You can assign them an activity at grade 2 level. It doesn't say on it from the child's screen, it doesn't say this is grade 2 level. They don't know that they've been given a different activity to somebody else. They've all just got activities to do, and they log in and they do their activities. So it's a really nice discrete way to differentiate. But also, yeah, very effective. And as I said, often there'll be the same activity. It looks at first glance like it's the same, but it's actually there as a variation of levels that they can work at.
Manju, maybe the final question.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And I am Manju, Head of Teaching Learning at Indian High School, Dubai. While going through your session, something which was very interesting was that fun element. Although I'm not a maths hand, being a social expert, I found this session really interesting. Let me come to the main focus. Ma'am just now spoke about gamification in the classroom teaching learning. Having said that, since we are dealing with the traditional mindsets where generally mathematics is taken as practice, so the moment we involve gamification in maths, it's very difficult to convince the parents, because they quantify maths with the written proportion in the notebook. And my second question is, when we incorporate these gamifications or the fun element in the class, generally it can be used as an icebreaker for the chapter, but because there is a gap between what is being taught and how it is being assessed, the complexity level increases. How do we address these two issues? Although we are claiming ourselves to be the digital native citizens, DLE is all taking bringing everyone together.
A very relevant question.
Yeah, but still we find that this bridging is needed. How to convince the traditional mindset and how to bridge this gap of what is being delivered and how then it is going to be assessed. So does Matific has those assessment tools as well, which would be related to? I would just like to have a insight on that.
Yeah, assessment is a really hot topic. It's a hot topic in Australia too. We have standardized testing called NAPLAN.
Exactly.
Yep. And there's a lot of objections to it at the moment. So it really comes down to changing the mindset of educators.
Exactly.
That assessment doesn't have to be sitting at a desk doing a formal test all the time. It's really, as I mentioned before, it should be formative. You should get to the end of a maths topic and already have a pretty good idea where everybody's at without the formal test at the end. If you've observed children, give them a moment to explain their thinking. This is all about visible thinking now. I'm getting onto a whole other area. But visible thinking is important. Let them show you their thinking and explain their thinking. Film them. I mean, that's actually a great way to remember what strategies they're using, or make notes. And along the way, as they're doing tasks, there's also project-based learning, and it could be done individually or in teams. And children, because as I said before, children learn off each other beautifully. And that can be a fantastic form of assessment, to give them a project that requires mathematical thinking within that project, and observe them, record how they're going along the way, and there'll be an end product from that project. There's many ways to assess, not just those tests, written tests at the end of a topic or at the end of a year. So it's all about changing the mindset.
Okay, so my takeaway from this would be, from this response would be that maybe we can use these type of elements maybe for assessment for learning, right?
Are you talking about using digital resources for assessment?
Yes.
It's another way to use, and it's another assessment tool, and it can be used in a variety of ways. Yes, it will give you a score. So that's the nice, easy, lazy way to use it. Give children a set of tasks and you will see their results in a beautiful report, and that's great. But the other way is, like I was mentioning, observe them. Even if you can watch a child do one question and get them to verbalize their thinking, you've got a great assessment just right there.
Absolutely. Last question from a dear leader of ours. Poonamji, ask your question if you're there, Poonam Kochiti, and that will be the final question for the day. Miss Poonam, you're there? You'll have to unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself. I have tried unmuting you. You'll have to unmute yourself and then.
Maybe they can just type the question.
I've been able to unmute myself. I've been able to unmute myself.
क्लास में ये इस क्लास में नहीं किया मैंने, ग्रेड 5 में किया, ग्रेड 4 में नहीं किया. I have to say it.
Poonamji, your question.
Am I audible?
Of course, yes. English that. Sports.
A bit of background noise going on there.
Okay. I don't think so.
Set course, I didn't go.
Okay, Jacky, wonderful having you with us. So thank you very much for your time. I think, and I mentioned earlier that that though we have exact 60 odd minutes, but we have extended our timeline by almost 17 minutes now. So I won't keep you waiting any further. You can unmute yourself, Jacky, and then hope to see you very soon, possibly. And for everyone who has attended this session, as I mentioned, the resources which are available, at least at the Matific level, will be available to you for any charge for the next 2 months. Okay, thank you.
I want to thank you all for attending. Thank you for your wonderful questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to them all. And I want to just really wish you safe times ahead. I know 2020 has been really challenging, but hang in there. We're all thinking of you. And I would just wish you safe times ahead. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jacky. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who could join us. Thank you. Hope to see you soon and stay safe. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.